First, we got to touch on the Will Smith, Chris Rock drama. Regardless of who was in the right or the wrong here, that moment and all the talk that it generated and is generating, is that a good thing for the Oscars?
Well, I think it obviously raises the profile of the Oscars, but unfortunately, the emphasis was taken off of the movies and the performances and the creative talent involved and all that goes with those productions and the movies that were being honored, and everybody above the line, below the line talent. It takes away from all that because now the focus is on the Will Smith incident and not on the movies themselves. Now, raising the profile of this awards telecast, certainly everyone's talking about the Academy Awards, but not for the right reasons. I mean, I think this is not the emphasis that you want to have when we're talking about a creative endeavor, something and a telecast that's supposed to celebrate those creative endeavors.
True. But at the same time, I mean, this is an industry that celebrates the idea, that thrives by the idea that there's no such thing as bad publicity. So while a train wreck, you don't want a train wreck to get attention the wrong way. Was this incident good for the business of Hollywood in any way?
I think we have to ponder that for a while, let this play out, because I don't know that in this immediate aftermath of it, we can be truly objective about what impact this may have going forward. And we'll just have to wait and see. But no question, this brought enormous attention to the Academy Awards and the Oscars and Hollywood at large. And in a way, I mean, somehow maybe you could find something good in that. But I think it really has to be about the movies more than what's going on behind the scenes.
Okay.
Or in front of the cameras as it was on TV.
All right. I know you're desperate to get to the movies and to talk about which movies won. So let's talk about Apple's Coda going home with the big prize, Best Picture. What conversation are the traditional movie studios having today in response to this streaming triumph?
Well, this has been a long time coming. And I know just few years ago, Roma was nominated for Best Picture. It didn't win that year, but everyone was kind of waiting for the year when a streaming service movie would win Best Picture. And now we're here. And the pandemic certainly accelerated the adoption by many people of streaming services. And a lot of people at home watching more content on their small screen than ever before. For the creatives, it's great because you don't just have only the major studios to go to find resources and the creative freedom to make movies. Now you have all these other players in the mix.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing. I think it's great for creatives, and the studios have to just keep doing what they're doing, but with an eye towards that there's also not necessarily competition, but other platforms offering great movies.
Okay, but when it comes to pragmatic things that they can do, how do you see these traditional movie studios repositioning themselves in the coming year? What will they do differently?
Yeah, I think it's also about the movie theaters as well, because for Oscar consideration, you have to play in a movie theater, even if it's for a week, just to qualify. Well, I think what the studios are going to do moving forward is realize that a theatrical first plan is best with a window, meaning between the time the film opens in theaters and then down the road, 17 days, 21 days, 45 days, released on the small screen. So I think that's really something that was learned over the pandemic, that films that went simultaneous release, meaning in theaters and on streaming on the same day, they didn't fare as well. And I don't think they got the cultural cachet that a film that has that theatrical first, you got to wait for it. You get that FOMO factor going, and just the prestige and exclusivity of a big screen release is really important. I don't think that's changed. I think it's actually been brought into sharper focus because of what we've learned over the course of the pandemic in terms of the business dynamics of streaming versus the movie theaters.
And I'm so glad you brought up, of course, Roma earlier, because that was a Netflix movie. Apple this time winning for Coda, besting Netflix. Unlike Netflix, content isn't even Apple's main business. How does this setback affect how Netflix proceeds?
Well, I think Netflix has done a really good job of getting a lot of great creatives on board because they are clearly invested in filmmaking. They've had some incredible talent attracted to Netflix and Apple as well. And if you ask any filmmaker, they want their movies that are intended for the big screen or envisioned that way to be on the big screen at some point. I think Jane Campion really, she wanted to make sure that somewhere out there was the ability to put the Power of the Dog on the big screen. So it shows how filmmakers, studios, and theaters are all going to navigate these waters moving forward about how they release films, what is the strategy behind the release of those films, and that the small screen presentation of these films is really important, but obviously the big screen is the engine that I believe still drives everything else.
Yeah. Well, Netflix, we know, measures everything. I mean, it's got metrics on all the different content that it does release on its platform. What is it about movies and the big screen that you cannot predict, that you cannot tell with even all the data that Netflix collects?
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because Netflix doesn't necessarily share all that data. It's actually very hard to get streaming data from any of the streaming services. And theatrical box office, as we do at Comscore, very transparent. That's available every day. We get all the numbers. I think for streaming, it's more about subscriber retention and also bringing in new subscribers. So how do you do that? With great content, having great showrunners, a brand identity that has a level of quality associated with it. And I think so that's very important for the streamers to build their own identity, because if you think about it, the main studios, if you think about, Columbia Pictures and Warner Brothers and MGM and Paramount, those are revered brands in cinema and film. And now Netflix and Apple and Hulu and Amazon Prime, they're all trying to build that legacy because they're relatively new to the game, but look at the impact they've had on the creative side and the business side of the movie business.
Well, let's talk about the show, the Oscar ceremony on its own, as a show, as content. I know I used to love the Oscars. I would stay up all night. I would actually take the day off the following day because it was like my Super Bowl.
Yep.
This year, I pretty much forgot that the Oscars were on until the afternoon of, and I think I'm not alone in that. We did see ratings jump from last year. I mean, last year being a very pared down Oscars, they were up 56%. Preliminary 15.4 million viewers tuned into the ceremony. What purpose does the Oscars serve? I mean, should it just be combined with the Emmys when it comes to celebrating really good content?
That's very interesting. Combine them with the Emmys, because you've got the big screen and the small screen lines being blurred. That wouldn't be completely crazy, although I think the Oscars have to remain what they are, a celebration of movies on the big screen. As far as the telecast, you're right. Back in the day, it was like you had to be up on Monday, and that used to be on Mondays. They would air the show, and then they switched it to Sunday within the last couple of decades. And it was a huge deal. And you had major talk show hosts and others. I remember David Letterman hosted. I remember back in the day, I think Johnny Carson, Clint Eastwood stepped in and had to stand in for a host who was running late. So, and the musical numbers, and it was very formal.
Right.
And now it's gotten a lot more, I think, viewer friendly in a sense, but I don't know if it has the sense of occasion that those Academy Awards telecasts from, let's say, the late 60s and the 70s had. That was, for me, kind of like you said, I think that was the time when you had to watch it. Everybody, it was like the Super Bowl for movies.
Exactly.
But it's still really important. And we've seen in our Comscore data that even the movies that were sort of played out by the time the nominations hit on February 8th, that they got a little bit of a box office bump. And they probably got a viewership bump on streaming. We don't necessarily know that unless Netflix puts it out there. But it's very cool to see that people are inspired by the nominations, almost more than anything else.
Yeah.
The win is great. The win will garner some of these films more attention on the small screen. But it is cool to see that people go, hey, I got to go see Dune in a movie. I have to see Dune in a movie theater because that incredible award-winning cinematography.
It goes back to that cliche. It's just an honor to be nominated. But I see what you're saying in terms of the value of that. I want to wrap up our conversation here. One of the big takeaways you have from the streamers versus the traditional studios is that both sides need each other, right? The small screen is a complement with the big screen. And the Oscars gives us an occasion to kind of ask existential questions about which one is more relevant, which one is more important. Who understands best that idea that the small screen needs a big screen and the big screen needs a small screen? Which person or entity or organization seems to get that the most?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think movie theaters understand it now more than ever. I think the theater owners understand it. Studios get it as well. And I think most importantly, the creatives today, meaning everyone again, behind the camera, in front of the camera, it seems that everybody more than ever has a understanding of the business of movie making and also the business dynamics of the marketplace with an eye towards which films should be greenlit and always intended for the big screen, which films are better served going straight to the small screen, and kind of everything in between. It's actually a really cool time. We're sort of in the Wild West in a good way.
Yeah.
Because I think this shakeup and this disruption is going to make for better movies, more creativity, greater release strategies, and some innovations that I think for the movie theater, which is sort of the way you go to the movie theater has been the same for many years. I think that's going to change a little bit in a really cool way. We don't know what those are, but the further differentiation of the big screen from the small screen and small screen and vice versa, I think is very intriguing. And we're going to be looking at that for now and in years to come.